Okay. I'd like to call to order the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District April board meeting. First order of business is the approval of the agenda. I would like to, before we approve the agenda, propose that we pop item 3F out and then bring that to action items. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yep.
We can make it 7D. Any other items on the agenda that you want to see moved or popped out of the consent agenda? Okay. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda with the proposed changes?
So
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. All abstained. Very good. Jumping to the consent agenda, item number 3, to be approved with one motion unless it's removed for discussion. Do I have a motion? Remember, we can discuss the consent agenda pieces after the motion. But do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. I got a litany of clarifying questions. If you don't mind. Did anyone have questions to start with? Just to begin.
just wanted to make sure the type.
Yeah, Stephanie sent me
corrections.
some typos that were in the minutes that I didn't think were substantial enough to me. I just had Emily make those changes.
Like clerical.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for sending those.
I don't have anything until B5.
I have something at C3. Let's start there. So C3, that is the Pioneer Park. Just wanted some understanding on when they're increasing the flood storage. Could you help me understand what drove a new permit application for that?
You're talking
Yeah,
about,
The 2509. Thank you,
Gotcha.
Nicole.
yeah. So this is a city-led project. They're creating new ponds and realigning trail for their project, and so their disturbance area is over an acre. So they trigger, and not only that, they trigger a floodplain rule because a lot of this park is mapped as inundated in the 100-year event. So actually, even if it wasn't an acre, it would still trigger a permit because it's a new disturbance.
And is this at all connected to some of the reuse work that was going down?
Yeah, the city is hoping to add additional capacity to the existing stormwater reuse system that the district led that portion of the project. So this would be tying into that system. The system would be downstream of these new ponds. And they are also pursuing grant funding for this project as well. But I believe the grant review hasn't been completed at this time. So they're just making sure they can get through the regulatory piece first.
Understood. Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, I got you. Okay.
C1, the Toyota retrofit. Just a quick question there. There's a mention that there's compensatory storage being provided. Can somebody remind us where that's being provided? Where or how?
Yeah, it's a small amount of cubic yards that they'll have to remove sort of adjacent to that structure that they're going to be installing, just so that they can balance their cut and fill to meet our floodplain rule. I don't remember off the top of my head how many cubic yards it is, but the contractor knows that they'll have to do a little bit of cut, not in the wetland, but adjacent to the wetland to maintain the existing flood storage.
So it's essentially on site.
The location,
Yeah.
the location's not shown on the plan sheet, but it's just to the southwest of the plantings, the forebay that's shown. That location's in the packet.
Thank you.
Stephanie, I think you said something on D. the stewardship grant.
Yeah, on the street sweeping. Just a quick question. If I remember correctly, in 2024, Woodbury didn't fully utilize its street sweeping grant. So just kind of curiosity, what happens to the funds that they didn't use?
Yeah, so with any grant, any funds that don't get used, just get released back into our
Oh, okay.
general fund, yep, so we have it allocated, so that's kind of why last year, at the end of the year, we were. Looked like we were over budget because we had allocated so much, but it wasn't that we had actually spent that. So I think with Woodbury last year, if I remember correctly, they just didn't get enough earlier season ones in by the time the grant was approved. So this year, they're hoping to get started a little bit earlier and
Okay.
use more of those funds, yep.
I had a subsequent question. Are we keeping track on how much we're giving each city, just to ensure that we aren't,
Yep.
how much in total will Woodbury have? Is this the total amount of the 75?
This is the total for this year, yep.
And it's for the city one,
And, yeah, and within our
Within
district,
Ramsey,
within
right?
our district.
yes, yep, South Washington is funding for their portion.
Have we heard of any other cities?
Not yet, Ashley is working on, so the past 2 years, we've let people just kind of apply, we sent it out like, hey, let us know what you want, so she's working on a more formal application that will go out. She's on vacation right now, so she's not here tonight, but that should go out in the next couple weeks, so then you should, I think we asked for everyone to apply by early June. So you should see some applications next month or the June meeting.
Thank you. I had a question on the Beltline branch repairs. Trying to get a sense on who owns those tie rods in Bedman. I just don't have a clear picture of, are we paying it because we should pay for it? Or are we paying for it because they tried to get somebody to pay for it and now they're coming in and asking us to pay for it?
Those dead men are owned by the Port Authority, and we disturbed them as we needed to disturb them in order to do the repairs for our tunnel. And so when we disturbed them, that led to the problem? that identified the problem,
Because they'd uncovered them.
because we had uncovered them, and so if we had just put them back, then they may have been susceptible to failure. And so because we identified the problem, they had requested that we correct the problem before we backfill everything.
Yes.
Taking a step back, they provided us specifications, plans, specs, whatever, in terms of location of those. And it turned out they were not very close to where they were intended to be. So had we had a better understanding, might we have approached this somewhat differently, knowing how close these were gonna be to the restoration? Repair.
I don't know that we would have approached it differently. The repair that was needed for the tunnel, that design was driven by the hydraulic capacity needed at that location. And the cross-sectional area, the geometry of the pipe that we were proposing to put in, we selected that based on the smallest footprint essentially that we could, the least amount of disturbance to hit the hydraulic design criteria for that improvement. So it wouldn't have necessarily changed the repair or the approach to the repair that we needed for the tunnel. If we had that information ahead of time, we may have had a better estimate of what the cost would actually have been.
Right, so like the sheet piling that we had to add, so that we could access that area because they were so much closer than we thought. That we maybe we would have anticipated that then and included that. But otherwise, the repair, like Brandon said, would be the same. Except for what you're getting at.
We don't own it, and so
Yeah.
are we maintaining it, and are we liable? This update, I'm just trying to get a sense it's an important
Mhm.
change, which is, I could have potentially pulled it off the agenda.
Yeah, I think.
I need some help
I-
internalizing and being comfortable with it.
So, the fact that our project uncovered it and then, a failure of that system would impact our project, could
Our belt
impact our
line.
project. We're still in, I would say, negotiations with them, even though at this point they said they're not able to contribute to that piece of it. I do think that they have some responsibility in that. So we're planning to still approach that. All we have so far is verbal, like, no, we're not, we can't do this right now. So we have a letter being prepared that we'll try and recoup that. But we did feel like we had to at least do that work.
But it needs, like, the work
to
needs
get
to be
it,
done.
the work had to
Yeah.
be done, yeah.
I could certainly appreciate our responsibility to cover that entire change order if we had caused it.
Mhm.
That's right.
But from my reading, my understanding, it doesn't seem we caused it. And it seems like that infrastructure was potentially failing anyhow. And we just uncovered it and said, hey, there's a problem here. And it's in their interest. It just seems that they ought to be sharing in the cost.
I'm in the same mind, and I'm trying to figure out how to, because the work's already done, it needs to be paid for. How do we ask the staff to move to continue negotiations with St. Paul? How do we get something there going? Because when I look at, I don't know, I'm not gonna, if a homeowner, like a home inspector finds something wrong with my home, he's not paying for it.
Mhm.
And so I'm struggling with it. So could you help me figure out what the motion needs to be to say, continue doing what you're doing, working with the St. Paul Port Authority? Because this does feel like something that they need to own also, or at least share in the ownership of.
Yeah, I think, well, there's a couple things. So like I said, we were already preparing a letter, but that could come from the board instead of from staff. It also could come from Tracy. Sometimes that puts a little more weight behind it as well. We could talk with Tracy about that. I don't know if you have anything to add, Tracy, to this discussion too, but yeah, I think you could have a motion to direct staff to, I don't know if negotiate's the right word, or
What do you recommend, Tracy? How
Contact.
would we word this? Oh, you're on mute.
Yep, I was thinking that there would be a motion from the board to ask staff or the attorney to work with the city to determine their portion of the cost. If the board is willing to do the work, maybe then what we're saying is we will repair, but here's what we think the city's portion of the cost should be. I don't know if we have that analysis. And then I think it would be just a motion to have the staff proceed to work with the city to cost share in making this needed repair. That's really their responsibility.
Could somebody propose a motion similar to what?
and that's to the Port Authority, which
Oh, I'm
is,
sorry. Okay,
That's
so
okay,
motion
Sure.
to have staff or the attorney work with the Port Authority to determine a cost share amount for the repair of, and I don't know if you want to get more detail on what the repair is going to be, Tina, I'd defer to you on that.
Or maybe you can say for the repair as cited by change order number 3 at the Beltline, Mississippi River Banks repairs.
Perfect.
Be all comfortable with that motion, just from a discussion standpoint? Now, we have a motion on the table currently. So what do you recommend for Robert's rules with Tracy?
Oh, that's true. We have a motion. I guess at the consent agenda, you probably would not pass it. You'd pull this one out and address this one separately, then go back to the consent agenda and approve the consent agenda's remaining items.
That work, Tina? We'll do that.
Sorry, it's so complicated.
Say nay, and then we'll.
well, can we?
Make sure there's
withdraw?
no further discussion on the consent agenda.
Can we
and-
withdraw the motion for the consent and then pull it and then, yeah.
Sure,
withdraw.
either way, sure.
Yeah, it's got that.
Motion to withdraw item D, or no, I'm
Well,
sorry.
first, we've got to withdraw the motion that was already put on the table.
So Motion to withdraw the consent agenda with the Pioneer Stormwater Reuse Project already being pulled. And then a motion to move the Mississippi River branch repairs to an action item.
Yeah, so first the motion to withdraw the consent agenda
Mhm.
motion.
So
So a motion to withdraw the consent agenda.
do I have a second?
Motion, yeah.
Second.
And then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we need a motion to
So, and
To
then,
remove
remove E.
item.
Yep, remove, yep, you're doing great.
Yeah,
Yep,
motion.
remove the, yes.
Mm-hmm.
item E, the Beltline Mississippi River branch repair, and move it to action item 7D. No, it's E this time. We already have a D.
Yeah,
So then there's a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving back to after you, Tracy.
So now we need a motion to.
Now your motion to approve the consent agenda. Back to it.
Motion to approve consent agenda as amended.
Perfect.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All abstain, say abstain.
and do we want to continue addressing 7E now then, as long as we're in the discussion, or you want to wait till you get?
I think we can, yeah, we're bouncing around a bit. So I think we do want to close 7E. So we've approved the consent agenda. I'm going to propose that we ask these wonderful men and visitors to wait for their comments. We're going to address 7E quick. So I'd like to talk through 7E. We had a motion that we were preparing. Does somebody want to, for that action item, does somebody want to move that we instruct staff and or our attorney to work through the cost sharing associated to the Beltline Mississippi River Branch Repairs change order number 3 with the St. Paul Port Authority?
Do we need any language in there that be brought back to us when a number is come upon? Because they may say, yeah, we'll take 25%, and maybe that's not acceptable in our eyes. I don't know. Do we need to get that detailed?
Well, I'm thinking if you're fine with staff just coming back with the proposal to get approved, then we wouldn't need to add it to this motion. If you wanted to add flexibility to say staff can negotiate up to a set amount, so that it can just get done, I guess that's the difference. Otherwise, it would imply that we have to bring it back to you.
Can I just clarify too? So this work has already been completed.
Right.
Okay, help. Thanks for that.
That work's been completed. So would we not approve this change order until we understand? I mean, we have the contract, it's not the contractor, right? So we need to pay the contractor for the work that we have completed.
Which I think is part of the.
And then
change
work
order.
with, yes, so that would be I just want to, because I think Tracy said something about, holding off on payment of the change order, but, we as staff did move forward saying, yes, this work needed to be done in order for us to complete our project and not wait for a, negotiation on the.
I appreciate that, Tina. So the issue is the contractor, they're due the money that they are asking for. It's just for us to work with Port Authority to see if they will cost share that expense.
Yeah.
So I guess it is a board decision on whether they do want to pay the contractor. I mean, once they're paid, it's going to be probably a little harder to negotiate with the Port Authority, but if they want goodwill and good working relationships in the future, you would think they would come to the table.
Right.
Where do people fall?
I think we have to pay the contractor, even if that makes negotiations more difficult. Because if we leave it unpaid, they could say, well, you're past the 30 days and we're going to charge you more now.
I'm a little worried about the contract language for it. We need to get the Beltline repairs completed. And I don't want any stall on that. And so I typically agree with that position. What do you think, Mark?
Is there a retainage on the project?
With the contractor, yeah.
So
There's really no teeth for the Port Authority, other than they've allowed us, property and access, and we have easements and stuff too, but, everything we have is with the contractor.
I guess I'm inclined to, it's not the contractor's fault. I have real misgiving about penalizing the contractor. It certainly weakens our case in negotiation with Port Authority, but I guess that's a risk that we have to take. We're doing this in good faith, and we could demonstrate that to the Port Authority.
So there's payments, this is paid out in portions, is that correct, if I remember correctly in the bill?
I believe this change order is in the partial payment, that's our, yeah.
Thank you. And so there's going to be a future payment. And so I think in certain terms of negotiating, we can say in that future payment, we're hoping that they cost share a portion of it from that. And I don't know if we have to be that specific. Y'all can figure that out.
Right, yeah. Figure that out.
But I'm comfortable if we amend, maybe it's a proposal and somebody needs to motion it. I would propose that we approve the change order with an instruction to staff and the attorney to work through cost sharing with the St. Paul Port Authority associated to the Beltline Mississippi River Branch repairs and change order number 3. If you agree with that motion, you can say so moved.
I would, so moved as, yeah, motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussions before we do this?
Only that it be brought back to the board. I'm sure it would, but just to emphasize, we'd like to follow up.
We'll keep you posted for sure.
Thanks, Tracy.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor of 7E, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All abstain, say abstain. Wonderful. Thank you for the gymnastics. Let's jump to visitor comments. So 2 gentlemen in the room, if you don't mind just saying your names, if you want to ask questions, engage.
Okay, my name is Bob Perry, I live on Lake Owasso, the East Shore, and I'm currently in part of the program for the restoration.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying anything bad, but I'm still on the hook for it. We're just starting, really appreciate it. But my concern today is the lake level of Lake Owasso. It continually stays really high versus the years. I've only lived there 30 some years, but it's come up and taken 5 feet of my shore. And I don't know if it's because of the backlog or the dam that we have on Jarvis that holds the water back, the whole system back. But I know when it leaves Lake Owasso, it trickles out through the gate, the trestle cover into Owasso, and it's trickling down into Grass Lake. And I don't know if there's something blocking those. If they've ever been cleaned out, do they get cleaned out through underneath the road and everything? Or
Well,
do we just clean out the gate on the end of it?
So we clean up, right? Is that okay if I
Yeah, please do.
respond? Yeah, so we definitely, we are monitoring and inspecting all of those points, those pinch points where there could be blockages. So we are checking those.
Under the road
And we
everything?
also monitor the water levels. So we're watching to see if there's anything out of the ordinary that would be occurring, but
And what is causing the water to be backed up so high for so long? Versus,
Brandon's looking at the levels.
I mean, I look at the report from years ago and it says it kind of at the 8.887, but. And I know the purpose of the restoration is not to prevent the water, stop water going into the lake. But every year the water's so high, it heaves the shore and everybody knocks down what we put all our money into. And then the next year, it used to take like 5 years between the heaving, something like that. And now it's this year.
Well, a lot of ice heat this year, right?
And it's been doing that, and it takes a foot of earth and that moves up and then DNR says you can knock it down. And it's just destroying all the money we've all put into this. And I'm just wondering, is there something we can do differently?
So that's something I'd want to follow up with you on afterwards so that we can,
And I
you know,
should have
take
been
a
a
look
little
at
more
the
prepared.
information. That's okay.
I could have emailed Paige a lot of questions.
Yeah. Still can.
We encourage you to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I'll get a little more organized.
Yeah.
We talk about it quite often. And
Yeah.
all our neighbors this year, I mean, it's a foot to 2 feet high in spots. and it's just gonna go back in the lake and destroy a lot of what we put into it. That's a lot of our tax money, all of ours.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. We will follow up with you on.
Okay, and then, was there an additional dam put on Jarvis before it goes into the river?
A dam at Jarvis,
Right, you know
no.
where Jarvis empties into the creek, into the
Spoon.
Mississippi? I go down there and it's a concrete retaining wall where it spills over into the trestle to go into the river. Have you ever been down there?
Oh, you're talking about down, so you're not talking about Jarvis, you're
Yeah,
talking
Keller Creek,
Keller.
are you talking about the control
Phelan.
structure?
Yeah, is that Keller, is it, that's not Keller Lake, is it?
South of 36.
Colors on that south side.
Yeah.
It-
Here's the golf course.
Yeah, so
Is it
Keller,
Keller?
the creek to
I know
Phelan,
it's down,
yeah.
Okay. Cause that seems like
So
they're really,
that's
really high too.
Always been there, or
It's
not
always been
always,
that height?
it's been there for a long time, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
They've got a little different situation. Okay.
yeah, but we
Thank you very
can,
much.
yeah, we'll get in touch with you and we can answer your questions more specifically.
Okay. And I hate to bug the guys when they're there cleaning, because I'm watching.
Oh.
I'm sure they appreciate that.
No,
Thank you, Bob.
For his benefit, I don't remember, I should, is, he said, Ovaso or Owasso?
I'm on Owasso,
Yeah.
so that is in Owasso.
Yeah. Is Owasso one of the lakes that has the automated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
so-
Brandon's got it up on his screen right
It
now.
has what?
We have the lake levels, we have a lake level reader, I don't know if you've seen that on our website, so you can see the
Oh,
current
I have
level.
not seen it.
Yeah, so if you go to our website under waters and you go to the Lake Owasso, you can see that.
Is that the graph? Or is there an actual?
It's gonna be more up to
Can I
date.
come over and look at
Yeah.
that? I'm taking up more than my 4 minutes.
Here, I have it
Oh,
over
that's
here.
nice.
It'll go back to have levels back to 2020.
Okay.
In this case, it looks like it goes back to 2022. And you can zoom in. The gray areas are areas where there's ice in the lake.
Okay,
So we haven't started publishing elevations yet this spring,
all right.
It's coming out.
but that's what we'll take a look and follow.
And where's that red? Is that where the outlet is?
That lake level station is near the outlet.
It's a
There's a
station.
little piece of city property
Yes.
that it sits, where there's like a dock, like a little dock, that's
Yes,
where.
That's where the outlet is, yes.
I think
Okay.
Kyle is here. Kyle, if I'm wrong, you should jump in, but. Or Dave, yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
No, you got it. You got it right.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Yeah.
You would finish?
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
More than chorus.
All right, going to item number 5, regulatory programs.
Oh, can you ask about
Oh,
Richard?
forgive me, yes. Richard, do you mind just, do you have questions or comments? Richard Sawday, did I say that? Unmute. Oh, no, you're fine. Oh. We'll see if he comes back off mute. All right. Comfortable to move forward? We'll record him on the list.
Yeah.
Okay, Nicole.
Hello. So for the section 5, we have one permit, the Woodbury High School addition. So this is an existing high school in the city of Woodbury. They're proposing to construct some small additions, but also some parking lot improvements, some reconfigurations to their drive and parking areas. They're proposing above grade filtration basins, or at grade, I should say, not below ground. Surface filtration basins due to poor soils. And then there are some interesting jurisdictional issues with wetlands on this site. There's 2 wetlands on the site. They've both been excavated in the past. So it's kind of, portions of them are considered historical and portions are considered excavated for stormwater purposes. So we did request a delineation and WACA approvals, including an exemption for a new flared end structure on the southeast corner of the wetland to the north of the parking lot. to be able to outlet one of the filtration basins. So that water will be pre-treated before it enters the wetland area. And that's the variance request for disturbance to the buffer as well. So if there's any questions, be happy to answer.
Yeah, I have a question. The map was a little bit difficult to read. And I was just curious about, I think there's a filtration basin, kind of a new one that's being proposed directly south of the larger parking lot on that west edge of campus. Is that, am I reading that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So I, just a little bit of context here. I've actually, in the past several years, have worked with the Woodbury High School Environmental Club. And I think they planted, and actually, I don't think, I know they planted a pollinator garden right there. So
okay.
In that area that's going to be excavated. So just as a, I don't know, as a request for continued engagement with that group, is there an opportunity for them to participate in a planting in the restoration of some of the other filtration basins or other restored areas?
I can certainly ask the high school. So the high school is the owner and they're requesting this permit. They didn't tell us about that. So this is the first time I'm hearing about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could certainly ask. It would be up to them if they want to, because the contractor right now would be on the hook for the filtration basins. I'm sure if that's in their contract. So the contract would be between whoever the general contractor is and the school district. So we could certainly mention it as that it was brought up in our board meeting, but I didn't, in my meetings with the engineers for the project, they didn't mention it either. So
yeah, it's a very small, I mean, it was a student-led project.
Okay.
And very much some, and I'm not well connected with them this last year, but
Okay.
there was a lot of sweat poured into that.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good to know. I will pass on a message if this permit's approved, just when I follow up with the school district and the engineer, and just kind of mention what was discussed about that area. Ask if there's any opportunities for vegetation enhancements or participation with students or that club.
right.
Just say that it was, part of our board members' activities in the past on this property. So yeah, thanks for letting me know.
I have a question on it, page 83 in the board packet around the description from BK and BM.
Yeah.
There's 2 encroachment descriptions, just to make sure I internalized it correctly, Nicole. The first proposed flare-in section, that's a permanent impact.
Yeah.
And all areas within 24-foot, they're going to restore, and so that's a temporary, just to give them access to that side, just to make sure I internalize that correctly.
Yep. So page 84, the areas grayed out are temporary disturbance. But you're correct, that flared end within the boundary of the wetland itself would be a permanent disturbance. So they got a WACA approval, pretty common exemption for those impacts. But yes, you're correct.
You're going to speak to the jurisdictional challenges on that. I had a question
Yeah.
on WACA submission that I wanted some clarity on, but if you could just walk us through that.
Yeah, so initially we just did a delineation review last summer, which typically delineation reviews, unless it's part of the application request, don't include any jurisdictional determinations. It's just saying this area is wet or this area meets wetland characteristics. So that's kind of why, and they were alluding to the fact, well, it's been kind of altered and excavated, but they didn't really have any information to back that up at the time. So I said, you can come back with a subsequent application if you're requesting that parts or all of these wetlands are considered incidental. And so that's what they decided to do, is just have the first approval be for the boundary, and then a subsequent approval when they submitted additional information like historical aerials and previous grading plans on the site, so that we could kind of parse out which areas were historical wetland and which areas were basically excavated right next to it, creating single pool area. So it's a little goofy. This isn't certainly common, but I think that they were wanting to make that clarification because they weren't finalized in their stormwater design yet, and wanted to see what their limitations would be for construction adjacent to those basins. So
ACA included was, because I was curious about the portions were considered incidental, so I think that you just covered that. Good.
Yeah.
Any further questions? This one was an interesting one.
yeah,
Okay, do I have a motion to approve permit 2508?
So moved.
Seconds?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All abstain say abstain. Okay. Permit 2508 passes. After you on the regulatory monthly memorandum.
yeah. So we have our violations and some of our meetings of interest listed here. We kind of just wanted to summarize as the field season ramps up again, which projects are kicking off around this time, which projects remain ongoing from last year that will continue to inspect this field season. And then also wanted to highlight that the Gold Line had their grand opening in March. And so some of our staff rode the corridor just to look at, experience the stops, the park and rides. And I know Mary was able to point out a lot of the permanent stormwater features on the route. And so while the majority of the work is wrapping up on the Gold Line site, we'll still have quite a bit of work to do regarding the permanent stormwater facilities, inspections of those, getting as-builts of all of those, and then also confirming who's going to be owning and maintaining them all in the future. Some of the BMPs are constructed in St. Paul, Oakdale, Woodbury. Some will be held on to by Metro Transit, but some will be transferred to respective cities. So we'll just need a clear understanding of that before we close the permit ultimately. But I can certainly answer any questions.
Questions? Cool. Looks like you're in for a busy season, so cool.
Yeah, I don't know, Mary or Kendra, if you wanted to share anything else from the Gold Line tour. I was not able to attend. I was working on board packet actually. So.
Yeah, I guess I would just say it's definitely worth taking a ride if anyone has some time to, especially from the beginning at the Woodbury Park and Ride, because that's also a different permit that we have at the district that Kendra's been inspecting. That's also a really cool new piece of infrastructure in the city. So
I'll say I enjoyed your photos. I also took the bus and took photos of the stormwater features along the way. So, yeah, it's a very nice transit option. So thanks for everything you do.
Cool. Thank you so much. Move forward to the stewardship grant program.
Yeah, guess that's me again. So you approved 5 grants today, and then there's been some staff approvals in there. I know they're starting to pick up on site visits for the season, a lot of interest, consult requests coming in, and projects that either partially started last year or were approved last year but haven't started, weren't able to start last fall, will get started shortly.
Maybe this is just something I just noticed in this board packet. I really appreciated the extra arrows, Drea. drawn to help me understand what the work was, the stewardship grant applications at the consent agenda, so thank you.
Oh, yes. Like
I think I've
labeling the
seen it before,
BMPs.
but I really enjoyed that.
Yeah,
It
I'll
made
make
it
note of that,
easier.
yeah. I think we try to do that and sometimes it doesn't quite make it to the packet.
Yeah, it was helpful, thank you. Any questions for Paige? Nice. Thank you, Paige. Action items. After you.
All right, well, we have 3 projects that have been selected for contractors. You wanna go ahead and
Sure.
walk through them?
The first one is for Roosevelt Homes Phase 3. Of course, it's the third phase. The first phase was constructing the basin to provide additional storage volume on site. The second phase was planting, and so this third phase is conveyance improvements to get water from their park, where it's currently pooling in their parking lot and their maintenance facility, into the basins that were constructed. We received 4 bids for the project. The low bidder was Shoreline Landscaping and Contracting, came in at the $323,711.43. That was a little bit higher than the engineer estimate, as we were looking through the review of bids and reviewing the line items. It wasn't, the prices were, there was some scatter throughout, but the one that jumped out, they seemed to have a noticeable difference in their mobilization relative to what the engineer's estimate had assumed for mobilization. This phase 3 involves some additional coordination with the property owner. There's some work that has to be sequenced in a specific way in order to remove playground equipment and prep that site so that the owner then do their project, their playground improvement project, immediately after this phase 3 work is complete. And so possibly one reason for that is the additional coordination needed for this phase here. So the recommendation is for you to consider a motion to I think it's written there.
It is right there.
So consider the board action as it's listed there, and of course, if you have any questions, happy to answer those.
It's been a long time since I've seen all the bids above the engineering probable costs, so thank you for helping me with that. That was my question.
Was the mobilization component high for all 4 of the bidders?
That's a really good question.
I feel like it varied, we had it, but, oh, yeah. I
So
have to look at that,
specifically
but-
for Shoreline, it was high.
Specifically for Shoreline, it was high. I think it's skewed higher for all of them, but for Shoreline, it was notable. You know, there was some other variability in different line items. Some were higher, some were lower than our estimate, but that was the one that stood out to us.
May I also ask, how familiar are we with all 4 of those? I mean, I see Shoreline we're familiar with, how about the second, third, fourth?
Yeah, we're very familiar with Sunram in particular, but these 4 were known entities.
Okay. Sorry, in the construction grant that has been awarded from MPCA, I understand that that funds up to 275 against that, the bid that they have here. And then if there are change orders, then the 13,000 plus comes in.
So we were approved for that 13,000 already, so the
Alright.
PCA gave approval for that, so we have that included. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
When you look at some of the bids, going back to that, were there any things that would inform the engineer's opinion of probable costs in the future, do you think?
Yeah, when we develop our opinions of probable costs, we look at recent bid prices.
Okay.
You know, and of course, it's a bit of a moving target, right? As you've noticed, some of our bids some of our estimates had consistently come in higher, and we've been making adjustments, and we'll have a data point where we'll start to swing back the other way.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Do I have a motion to accept the bids and award the 2025 Roseville Home Phase 3 project to Shoreline Landscape and Contract, and direct staff to prepare and mail the notice of award and prepare the agreements and review the required submittals?
So moved.
Very cool.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Abstains. Moving forward, so these are printed, right?
Yes, both the next two, reports for the impact and recovery services were placed at your spots. Things were just on Monday, so we have had a bit of proposals were received. So just as a reminder, these were smaller projects that are under the requirements for a full public process. So these were run a little bit differently. So we sent them out to receive proposals and then selected contractors based on those. Yeah, so Maplewood Toyota, I think, is first.
Yeah, the Maplewood Toyota, you talked about this one early on in the packet, so I won't rehash that one. This was a request for quote. The engineer's opinion of probable cost was $26,000. The low bid received from Binko was at $24,900. We did get a good response from this one. We did receive six quotes. For this memo here, because it wasn't a publicly bid process, we're listing just the low quote received. So the recommendation here is that we just awarding the low quote received, and the language is in the packet. If you have any questions, happy to talk through those.
Do we have any experience with Minco?
That's a new name.
Yeah, so we haven't worked directly with them, but Bar has, so that's why we had them on the list. We crossed paths when they were on that Suzanne Pond project in Sherwood. So knew of them.
If I recall correctly, the outcome is to put in a structure that is easily maintainable by the property owner. And so this is something that they are known to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And again, of course, it's a small scope. It's a very small area.
Yeah, I figured treat all the things the same. Keep asking that question.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the selected contractors, direct staff to prepare contracts and review the required submittals?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Cool. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. All abstained. Very good. Moving on to the charter retrofit program projects. Sorry.
Yeah, Cochrane Recovery Services.
Yes, I could have read the rest
That's
of
all
it.
good.
Long day, sorry.
That's okay.
All right, so this site is looking at creating rainwater gardens. This one was request for quotes. So we requested quotes in the same way that we did for the previous project. For this one, we received 4 quotes. The low quote came in at $111,775.81. That was lower than the engineer's estimate of $152,000. The low quote was for Minnesota Native Landscaping. We have quite a bit of history working with them. They were also the low bidder for phase 2 for Roosevelt Homes. So the recommendation is to award. Yeah, I'm not gonna paraphrase the recommendations in there. If you have questions, happy to answer those.
This one is,
I was just gonna say the quote was significantly lower than the engineer's cost. Did you have conversations with them to ensure that they understood the full plan set, rain guardians, everything?
Yeah, our team has been reached out to them, and we've had success with them on a number of projects. So we feel comfortable and understand what they're bidding.
I've forgotten now. What is the limit or what's the cap at which we go out to public bid and?
$175,000.
Thank you.
Reading while you give your openings, although I apologize, Brandon. Could you remind me how many other quotes we received?
This one 4.
Four. Thank you. I don't believe there's anything unique on this program unless we had talked and reviewed it last time. I do recognize that contractor. Any further questions? Do I have a motion to approve the selected contractor and direct staff to prepare contracts and review the required submittals?
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you very much. Further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Those 3 actions pass. Now on to 7D. I jump back up to my notes. This is the change order on Pioneer Park, isn't it?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
63 on the PDF.
May I ask a question on this?
Absolutely. Why don't you lead us off?
So just a question. I understand part of this problem was created because the city was unable to locate or mark the irrigation lines. So can they do that now? I mean, what will enable them to correctly mark irrigation lines in the future?
Maybe Dave, are you there? Oh, there he is.
For their system and underneath their park for their irrigation lines, nothing. It's a private utility. They might not know where they are. We wouldn't know unless we got that information from them. It's one of the few utilities that really are not marked.
I did a price quote for my own home for sprinkler systems, and it's quite expensive to map them. They use this ultrasonic technology to do it. And it's even then it's not that accurate, or it is accurate enough, but they could miss things. I was going to build on your question and ask if when they looked at it, did you guys consider any kind of mapping? I just don't know how it compares to the overall cost of fixing it.
And then, no, I guess we didn't really talk about it specifically. We could have put, and we do have points where they are, where we hit the line and kind of where we had to expose it and look at it. But as far as them mapping it or what that would look like, we did not talk about that. I'm not, Brandon might have a better idea, but how you would even go about it, if you'd have a little mini rover that you'd have to track on the top to actually map their line and see where it was. I don't know how you would do that for a sprinkler system like that.
And this happened, as part of our project, but in the future, it's the city's utility, so it'd be up to them if they're mapping in the future,
So for the continued expansion of the reuse water, does that require any additional drilling, digging, or is that going to be our problem?
Oh, with the permit just approved?
Yes.
So those basins are located on the north side of the park now. So that said, we don't know what the extent of their irrigation system is. So, but that would be their project, their responsibility. That's something separate from the Pioneer Park project here that we're talking about. The only connection between those two is the hydraulic connection. Those new basins would drain down into the location for the intake for this irrigation system.
I should explain why I pulled it from the, I do not understand how we landed at 75% us covering it. And I think that's what triggered me. With the contract being fairly explicit, I realize hitting the water lines happens. It does. My understanding is it's, generally they don't map the water lines, or at least in residential properties. Maybe there's an analogy here, mainly because it's cheaper to actually fix them than it is to map them. And so as I look at this, I just need help understanding why we took the brunt of it when it was very clear in their contract
that they're gonna take responsibility.
Yeah, I think, well, Dave dealt with them more. Do you want to talk about that, Dave?
I would just, my biggest thing is just the fact that it wasn't labeled where it was. There is really no way to understand where it is for them on the plans. It kind of showed up farther north in the ball field itself. So they were thinking it was a good, 50 feet away from anything that we were doing. And out of kind of fairness of kind of having that on the plans and then doing a lot of work with them, they are good contractors. I don't think they're trying to shortcut or jab us by any means. Just trying to be fair and working with them on the project for as far as the payment and asking for what it was. Phone conversations, maybe we could have gone a little cheaper, but they asked for the full price and they accepted the 75%.
Why didn't we go for half before that? I'm just trying to understand. I'm saying that you have to litigate. If it's a shared problem, effectively paying 75% says, well, we should have done something different. We should have done it. It's something that we missed and we pay the majority of it.
Yeah, we started kind of there and then they bounced back at 75% and then I was just, it seemed okay.
Yeah, I think, like Dave said, we felt they did their due diligence. There might have been some fault to the city. We're not, we've been in the loop on this, but we aren't going to ask them for funds on this, but yeah, it was more just having that good relationship with the contractor and having those conversations.
If the rest of the board thinks it's not worth pursuing, we can move forward with it. But as I read through it, look back to the old contract,
There are three parties involved, four really, us, the contractor, the city. I guess I was counting the contractor twice.
And there's a sub to the contractor Kilmer for that too. So
There's not very good parallels, but there's some parallels between this and the belt line. In this case, I guess I was comfortable with a 75% share. They've reduced, they're taking on 25, but I feel more comfortable if it were lower.
Because it comes, I could go back to them. I mean, this did come a little bit late in the stuff, and I can go back to kind of some of those conversations and be a little bit more firm after this conversation and go on till next month.
we have a good relationship with a lot of different contractors. I'm not saying that this is precedent setting. I don't want it to be there. I just don't want us to get a sense of, well, this is in the contract, we wrote it specifically, we'll take most of it if you do it, because that does feel like it shifts the liability around a little bit. And so, or the responsibility around a little bit. It would make me more comfortable if you don't mind just asking them, hey, we're definitely willing to cost share, but it should be a shared cost because it's right in the contract.
Yeah, I have no problem doing that. But yeah, I think they'd be received as well. I think it'd be listened to.
You guys help me here.
Well, I would even go as far as saying that you would make a, Tracy, again, you can help with this too, or Brendan.
We're using you tonight, Tracy.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking more of process in the future. If we do have change order requests like this, I feel like if we put the staff on the front line to work with these people day to day and be put on the spot on what they'll do. So, if there was a representation like that 75% was fair, I'm sure the board will listen to you, Dave, on that. I'm thinking a little deeper in the future on processes, say, we're not in any position to approve this change order. I'm going to have to go to the board before I negotiate or I talk to you or something. I mean, I'm thinking more about that process than this exact issue. And Dave, I think we'd take your feedback on whether you're uncomfortable going back to them, or if you say the board's made a motion that they're willing to pay up to 50% and see what happens with that. I guess I'd leave that to the board, but I think it's hard, as you give Dave and Tina and Paige, they're all on that front line working with these people day to day. So it's easier to sit in the room and be tough. But I think establishing a process so you're not put in that spot would be really the most helpful, I think, at this point.
And I don't know if it's one to be tough on. I mean, yes, it's their responsibility to locate all utilities and not hit them. In the case of like, if it was an electrical line, I'd be more on your side. Because that's like something, well, just from the standpoint of that is something that can be located easily, repeatable. With irrigation line, there's no tracer wire. You don't know how it's put in the ground. Even as-built aren't usually that reliable. I wouldn't want to make Dave go back and rework it. You know, the location is their responsibility. If they're not unable to locate, if they're unable to locate it, in this case, yes, it's a shared, but I'm kind of with the attorney's report and not making them the bad guy.
Yeah, I don't want to make Dave the bad guy because I definitely trust his judgment on it. I do think we need to talk about a process in which we have a discussion for it. In this particular instance, I don't want to damage the relationship with the contractor, but I don't also want to set a precedent. I don't want other people to come in and say, well, we hit something that we had in the contract we were accountable for, and now, you know, hey, could you help us? Because they start out saying, hey, you guys pay for all of it. That was their negotiation topic. I would do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I look at it, I don't want to die on every hill to the point that you're highlighting. And if the rest of the board feel comfortable that way, I could be swayed for this one. But I would encourage that we make a motion to figure out how to help with this in the future, especially in these ones where it's fortunately very clear in the contract.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the process is that I mean, it's always at the discretion of the board, right? So you always are approving change.
Right.
That's clear, I think, to the contractor, especially when we're negotiating like this. So I don't think it's bad for you to say. And I don't know that we need a motion to develop the process. I think we have it. We just will be a little more firm maybe on how we address that, but.
I mean, another way to look at this particular change order is if you knew the irrigation line was there, would there be an added cost to the contract, or would we have built that into the contract? So, you know, that's another way to look at it because nobody knew about it. You know, would we have expected added costs knowing it had been there ourselves?
I think we would have changed. I always like the idea of, never mind, I don't even get into the details on how to do it, but yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, I would assert that they knew there was an irrigation system there. I mean, that's the whole idea of the reuse. They're gonna exactly where the irrigation lines are. They didn't necessarily know that, but they knew there was an irrigation system. I have kind of a technical question that might be irrelevant, but I'll raise it for. I have little experience with irrigation systems. I'm gonna pose that they are probably fairly shallow typically, a couple feet deep, maybe. Knowing that and knowing that there was, you know, there is an irrigation system, would it have been more appropriate for the boring contractor to go deeper? Just on the premise that, hey, that's an additional safeguard. So that's kind of a technical issue, but.
I don't know. I guess I don't know that standard practice for a boring contractor enough or have done enough experience with that answer that question. If it's always kind of, we're going to go 1.5 feet down because that's just how it's done. It's how it's always been. Or I don't know. I don't know.
Dave,
Right.
Dave, what's your comfort in going back and talking to people?
Yeah, I'm fine talking with them. I'll just kind of express how the kind of conversation went with the board and what's that, and then kind of how it's driven and where it was. You know, we did start at 50 and kind of agreed at the 75. You know, they hit us with 100, go back to 50. Let's agree at 75. But yeah, I'll go have. I don't have a problem with that.
So I'm okay with accepting because of the email trail here. It's already says that we're accepting the 75%. So with that in play, I guess what I would say is next, if we could in the future, just say, hey, you know, let me take this back to consideration, and you can use the board as kind of the bad guy. You know, I can't accept this until I get the approval. So
Yeah, I think that's fair. And just, I mean, these were lower dollar amounts too. So I mean, if it were a bigger issue, bigger problem, you know, there would be more of that discussion, I think, than for these dollars.
How does the board feel? Comfortable moving forward with it? How do I do that? Not pertinent vote, there's a Robert's rule for it.
And not what?
Thank you for that.
I know.
That was, no, there's a,
Sorry,
it's just,
it's my brain.
it's
my
like, I'm
wheels
trying to
were
figure
turning.
out, there's a Robert's rule around, like, just checking where people are. Tracy, you
Okay.
remember what that's called? I can't remember what it is.
Oh, just like a preliminary roll call?
Yeah,
But I mean,
it's fine.
but you really should probably have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, we should do
Yeah.
that. Do I have
Emotion.
do I have a motion to approve permits 25, oh no, shoot.
No. Change order
Change
3.
order number 3 of the
Okay.
Pioneer Park Stormwater Reuse Project.
So moved.
All right, I have a second.
Second.
How are people feeling about it? Good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a small dollar amount. We've worked a lot with Peterson companies. I don't know. Somehow I'd like to send a little bit more
This one's Minger, right?
message that, hey, you know,
Or,
we don't want to see a lot of these, you know, take whatever precautions you can. But,
Oh, yeah, Minger.
so I could support it.
I can support it as well, but I just wanted to be known if there are bigger ones, we just help you be the bad guy.
Yeah.
I think starting off with 50% is fair, Dave. I give you the benefit of the doubt there. But it really is 0%. That was the starting negotiation point.
Yeah.
So 50 seems pretty reasonable at that.
and I
Right.
think, I don't know if this helps what you were thinking, but you know, they have come at us, well, I'm thinking they did, finish the Target project too, so there were things on that one and this one that they may come to us and ask, and Dave does a great job right away, like, no, we're not, you know, that's you guys, so there are.
I would be very
There
clear.
are,
This is
there are
not a-
things where it's like, no.
This is not at all a judgment on what Dave has done, and I think he did it well. It's just as, you know, if it didn't follow the Beltline Mississippi branch repair, my stance might have been a little different, but I was coming off holy buckets to this next one.
That's
So, all right, so all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. I'll abstain, say abstain. Change order 3 passes. Okay, moving forward to attorney report. Tracy.
Yeah, thanks. You know, it's you know, it's interesting this month because there's a few more emails that go back and forth on just these small projects, right? We even want to try to change the terminology. Are they really putting in bids when they're under that threshold of the 175,000, or are they quotes? And who do we approach? And I just want to say you're just in such good hands, because between Bar and, you know, the watershed staff, they are so quick to send me an email and ask, okay, do you think we're doing this right? It's almost easier doing the $1 million projects where the statute says just exactly what we need to do. And so I always feel really comfortable that staff is really going the extra mile to make sure we're even doing those small projects right and getting the correct quotes. So we're pretty busy with those couple of smaller quotes that you just adopted and approved. We have a County Road C that we need to close out. We have some issues with a subcontractor that we're going to be focusing on. And I see awarded another project, so we'll be probably reviewing that in the coming months. And just a little side note, Lauren is back from her maternity leave, and you're going to probably see her for the next half year. But that's all I have.
Any questions for Tracy?
Thank you.
Richard, you came off mute, bud. You have something to say? No? Okay, just curious. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Oh, thank you. Were you asking me a question, or were you asking Richard?
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay, good. Didn't want to miss anything.
Moving forward to board discussion topics, I think Ben and I attended this legislation event on March 21st. Probably the easiest approval I've ever seen. I mean, Ben, we can feel free to jump in and talk about it, but I think the Minnesota Watershed's lawyer really walked us through, the attorney walked us really well through the story, the justifications, what's happening. Quick question here and there, nothing much. I think there's some work around, can it be done? What I liked about the language is they said, look, if we can do it remotely, we'll do it remotely. If we can't, we're going to do it in person. So that's going to be left at the judgment of the board.
And that's for a meeting that's going to be held in August.
Correct.
In order to approve the resolution and what
It's
the
appro-
legislative platform.
Yeah, you approve the legislative platform and then we'll still have to like approve at the annual meeting at the end, just everything completed. I think what really stood out to me is they're going to try to involve every member, every board member. And so I think if I got my times right, they're gonna have everything kind of finished. And they're gonna put out for resolutions and they're gonna assemble everything. And I think they're gonna send it to us by June 1st is what they've said. We'll see how, how well they are in flexing on that because it's the first time through. Which means that our first glance is and discussion about it at the board is that board June meeting, right?
Thought it was July.
I think it was June.
I think it's June for the first discussion of all the resolutions, and then they send something out again in July 1st in that
The
first.
summer meeting is in June, is that, would it be part of that? Or is
Well,
that
I mean,
the-
there might be
that's just
some
the-
discussion of it, but yeah.
That's a date. They've set dates the first of each month. They kind of walk through why. It kind of made sense at the time, but the turnaround time is really quick where they're looking for feedback on it from June, and then they're going to take it to the board, and then they're going to refine, and then they're going to send out more finalized version sometime in July 1st, that month. We'll see.
So, and I had a meeting today with Jan and some other administrators and one idea, and Jan was gonna think through this, but for that, so June, you'll all see the proposed resolutions,
Like
June
raw
1,
version.
like everything,
Everything.
you'll see everything. But what I suggested is that you filter, so they're not getting comments from every board member. That they filter, like I would ask you for your comments on those, and then I would send them from Ramsey-Washington. I think you have to be a little, or they need to be a little careful about having one board member from an organization have an idea or thoughts, not representing the whole board, right? So I would collect those comments and, send them as a board kind of response to that. So that's something I think they're thinking about. But.
So her note says, so you submit them to them by June 2nd. On this request for resolutions.
Is that what it says, June 2nd?
Yeah, and so we see them.
And then I think
July.
they were gonna just have them live, like you could see everything that's submitted right away.
You're correct. It's submissions by June 1st, and then we get to see them all live. Yeah, I didn't have my notes with me. Either way, it's a fast freaking turnaround time.
It's got a lot of-
And thank you, Ben, you're right.
Yeah, because we had discussion about how we had that same thought, like
Like how
not
we-
having one board member's voice be higher than the board. Is there a possibility of us looking at them as a board, as a part of a workshop, as a part of a standing board meeting, so that then Tina could give the unified response?
Which I think it's gonna be interesting the first time, but I kind of like what they're trying to do, be more inclusive. I really like
Yeah.
their outcomes.
I think the overall process is a huge improvement.
I 100% agree.
And the thought is that it would be hard to get the board together necessarily
Yeah.
to do that. So that was the idea. Like if you submitted them to me, you 5 did, and then I could send out as a kind of collective comments. But we'll see. And we're gonna learn a lot, I think, in this first years.
Yeah. That's
Thank
the
you
only-
for attending. I appreciate that. So I know they had good attendance, but it was tight, right, for
There
the
was-
quorum?
Not exactly quorum.
Yeah.
Well, there are a couple more.
There's a couple
It was
more?
like it was either 45 or 46.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe they need 43 or
They need
something.
43.
Yeah.
I know they said I was quorum and I was like a minute before.
Yeah, there was a group of farmers that came in after.
Okay, I didn't notice them.
Yeah,
I just thought that they were that tight in
yeah.
reservations.
Oh, well, yeah.
Mhm.
So thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we talked about it briefly, the board discussion of it. New reports, any other board discussion topics? I apologize, Joe. Lauren has been waiting patiently to talk to us about engagement. Let's do it.
Nice. So we're gonna go over some 2025 engagement initiatives. Most of this should be somewhat familiar from the board reports. I'll try to keep it short, sweet, and clear. All right, so just to set a baseline here, I'm going to talk about communications versus engagement because we're going to be talking about engagement quite a bit in this presentation. So the difference is that communications primarily is to inform, educate, and sometimes influence. It's largely a one-way form of engaging with the public. Social media comments, of course, are in that as well, but largely it's us sending a message out to the community. Engagement is intentionally composed so that it forms new relationships. It's a dialogic form of interacting with the public, and it's collaborative. And research has shown that this is the most effective at establishing trust, which is pretty important with new audiences. So moving on to what we're going to be doing with the management plan. So this is specifically public engagement. So Barr has outlined how the board is involved, how the CAC is involved, how the staff is engaged with our management plan process. So I'm really going to be focusing on our public engagement measures and what we're trying to do here with this particular update. So number one, we're trying to expand opportunities for engagement in comparison with 2016. So multiple opportunities in multiple formats, and I'll go into what those look like in a minute. We're looking at prioritizing equitable engagement practices. So looking at potential barriers to engagement or providing feedback and finding ways that we can kind of open up those opportunities and get around those barriers. And under that is increasing the accessibility of these opportunities, whether that's accessibility for people who have disabilities or just general accessibility and it's a user-friendly experience and it's at places that people congregate. The results that we're looking at are having a set of feedback data that paints a more complete and representative picture of people's values and their concerns on water quality and flood risk management, erosion control. So where does this idea come from? This is the IAP2 spectrum of public participation. They're kind of the thought leader when it comes to public participation or engagement. And they have the spectrum in terms of how much the public is involved in decision-making when it comes to public sector organizations, whether that's nonprofits or government organizations. So one of our goals here is typically we'd be looking at kind of in that consultation column there, and we're trying to move to the involvement. So when you look at the promise to the public, what we're working to do here is working with the public to ensure that their concerns and their aspirations are directly reflected in the management plan, and then we'll provide feedback and updates on how their public input influenced our final decisions. And different groups are along the spectrum. So the board would be all the way on the end for power because you all are the final decision makers. We're implementing what we decide as a group. And CAC and staff are also on here, but we're really trying to move from consult to involve. So the step one for this is to create the right tools. So we're working with Barr Engineering to create basically a one-stop shop online for updates on the management plan and also opportunities to provide input. And there's two pieces to that. We're looking tentatively at doing a landing page where we have those updates, background information on the management plan that's public facing, and then basically a survey with mapping features. So something that's mobile optimized. We're looking at providing kind of a kiosk setup for events. So either our tabling opportunities, Waterfest, things like that. And that will hopefully streamline our data collection as well in our reporting. So all of the information is going to the same place. We're able to collect that, interpret it, in real time.
At those events, do you think you'll provide some sort of Wi-Fi hotspot, or are we just?
Yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we already have those. We're looking at buying kind of a kiosk setup. We have those priced. We've looked at that for multiple opportunities, like encouraging people to sign up for Adopt a Drain previously. So it's something we've looked at before. But with this in particular, we're really thinking that that could be a real opportunity. And we're looking to train, actually there's a training going on right now for volunteers who are getting engagement and outreach specific training for the organization, and will be able to walk the public through this kiosk process as well, and answer questions. So yeah, multiple formats. We want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for user-friendly experience for different audiences. Not everybody engages with information the same, and we want to make sure that that's not an obstacle for people. So we're going to have open houses in various areas, both online and in person. We really ramped up our event tabling last year. We did about 15 to 17 events. We're looking at continuing that pace this year and integrating management plan input gathering into that process. And some of that is just being present at common gathering places like farmers markets, community events. I mentioned the kiosk. We're also looking at providing either that kiosk or QR code at public buildings. So libraries, recreation centers, where people can easily access that interactive map-based survey and provide information as well.
As you've increased your event tabling,
Yes.
have you seen them address a larger swath, both socioeconomic? What kind of attendance have you seen just qualitatively? Like, are you reaching as many populations as possible with some of the event tabling work you've already done?
It really varies. So we did 2 visits to the Moncton Farmers Market last year. I think that was one of the most valuable things that we did. It may not have been quantitatively the first time, but the second time we started building on those relationships. And we were able to not only make connections with the staff, but people who identify themselves as community leaders, and they invited us back this next season. We want to do that with Hmong Village as well, because that's closer in our district. But yeah, a lot of this engagement, it's slower. It takes multiple visits. It's longer term. So one of our hopes last year was that we could kind of set the foundation for the management plan engagement. So that wouldn't be the first time people were hearing from us.
That's great to hear. Do you know if there's any traffic from families from manufactured homes or that population as well? Out of curiosity.
I don't think that we've specifically identified that.
Yeah, it's one of those underserved populations that I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can go into a little bit more about how we're planning on engaging underserved populations, specifically through the contractor.
I will shut up.
Okay. No, these are great questions. Let's see here. Progressing further. Okay. So speaking of that, we looked at certain areas where we thought, okay, this is going to need a little bit more effort, a little bit more presence than others. So on the left, if you remember, we did a community survey last February where we were looking at basic questions like people's familiarity with the watershed district and what we do. And this is the breakdown that we had by sub-watershed. The areas in blue are the lowest that we had in terms of people's awareness of the watershed district and specifically what we do. There's other areas, that need improvement for sure, but these were the ones that it was in the 20s instead of, 50, 60, 70. If you're curious, the area that had the highest amount of visibility was the sub-watershed around Coleman Lake. So on the right, that is our equity priority area map. That's something that we use a lot with the stewardship grant program. We're especially looking at those dark blue areas. Historically underinvested communities, higher in the social vulnerability index. There is a little bit of overlap between these two maps, but we're basically looking at, okay, how can we get both of these areas? How can we get these dark blue areas and some of the light blue areas, plus what we saw in the map on the left-hand side? And we know that that's going to take more capacity, more time, and expertise. So this is what we have in terms of the areas identified in that RFP. The dark blue are the areas that our contractor is going to be working on providing several events. The green squares are where our staff is going to host open houses. And those small blue dots are what we have identified so far in terms of our tabling events. So things like the Oakdale Eco Fair, Venice Heights Ice Cream Social, Market Days, and White Bear Lake, some of our more successful farmers markets from last year. You'll notice that we're still looking for some better opportunities in some of these areas. So especially specific events in Woodbury, we'd be interested in that. We did the farmers market last year. It wasn't the greatest weather, so that might have something to do with it. But we're looking at something where we have a little bit more traffic. The pink near Lake Phelan is identifying where we're going to have our public kickoff. So that's the one Bowser required event that we have. So that's happening at May 31st. That's when we're really going to start kicking off some of these. We have little practice events before that, making sure that things like the survey are working. But that's really where we're looking at kicking off a lot of these efforts. If you're looking at volunteering at Waterfest, I especially encourage it this year because we will be planning on doing that.
There's locations we believe that'll be tracked by some of those underserved populations.
Sorry.
The locations you picked for
Yeah.
open houses, we believe those areas will be tracked by some of those underserved populations.
Yes.
So so the open, there's a lot on there. So the open
Yeah.
house is in the green area?
So
The
those
green
are
squares?
those are our staff. Like, we're basically looking at those areas as something that the engagement team will host. The dark blue areas are what our contractors and associates. So I moved to, let me just
If you
clarify this
could
a little
just,
bit.
so you've got 3 separate sections of that dark.
Those are the
dark blue.
areas we're
Okay.
asking them to concentrate
All
on.
right.
Right. So basically what we're asking them to do is we're asking them to have 5 engagement events in those dark blue areas, May through September. So they're going to work with us in terms of developing an engagement plan. That's one thing that really stood out to us about this particular proposal. Number one, they've worked with public agencies and watersheds in particular in the past in the area. Number two, they had a lot of informed language in their proposal around equity. And number three, they had a plan for including stakeholders, community partners in every step of the process, which we thought was especially important, starting with the engagement plan meeting. So we are planning on having our DEIA consultant at that engagement plan meeting as a subject matter expert. We're planning on inviting some of our kind of community leaders or of some of the organizations that we've worked with that are within that area to come up with a process or ways that we can form those 5 engagement events. So in terms of the format of those particular engagement events, that's really going to be informed by that meeting. They've begun work and we're hoping to schedule that particular meeting soon. They're going to do reporting throughout the process. So I've asked them to do midpoint reporting and also final reporting in October. And the goal for that is that when you all have your second board workshop towards the fall, that you'll have a lot of this data to work from. Not only from what we're talking about in terms of those green areas and those little blue dots that Ramsey-Washington staff will be leading, but the work that's going to happen in those dark blue areas. And those are the ones where we thought, okay, these, you know, we have less visibility here. We have people who have less access to time and resources. So let's make an extra effort to come to them and work with people who already have a strong relationship with building, strong experience with building those relationships in communities.
Summarize something real quick, just make sure it's sunk in.
Yeah.
So the green events are what we're doing as a staff. The blue events are things that we are going to go to the circles or other planned events. The red dots kick off. In the blue, we've hired a contractor that knows that area to get 5 events within those blue areas so we can get their voices.
So you haven't identified what those 5 engagement events are yet?
Correct.
Have you had conversations around what those look like and how they're formatted? I know, just a comment, in past plans that I've been involved with, our most successful events have been coupled with things that are already happening. So we've gone to like food shelf nights, and those have been the most successful by far. You guys maybe have already thought of this, but I just wanted to.
Yes, that's
Okay,
definitely been
mention
part of the discussion, not only in those dark blue areas, but honestly, in those little blue dot areas and other places as well. We're reaching out to city staff in some of these areas and asking them, this is what we're trying to do. Where do you think would be the best venue for this?
Awesome.
So sometimes it's not always the biggest event, like if it's a big fair with carnival rides and people aren't expecting to have that kind of conversation, it may not be the best venue. But there may be something that's, you know, in the medium size that we can have a presence at and have those quality conversations. It just, is this not funny? No. I tried that, but it wasn't enough. I just got a notification today that I'm getting a new computer, so this one is a little on its last legs.
Is it on the shared drive?
Yeah. I think I can go here.
Take a coffee and break.
Yeah.
Get some chocolate.
Like I can do it from memory, but I don't know if that would be as interesting.
It's a little.
Yeah, it's coming back on.
That would be awesome.
What's that?
Interpretive dance.
Yeah. Go for it.
Well.
We need Joe here for that. Yeah, Joe is a good one for that.
Yeah.
He's not here.
I don't know if I've seen that side of Joe yet.
Interpretive dancing.
The interpretive dance side.
I feel like if you ask,
Yeah.
Ask politely.
As things are popping up, I went back to my notes on that meeting. We are supposed to see them in June. It's just a 10-day turnaround, and then the board sees them July 1st. So we will only have like a 10-day window to actually look at it.
For
No,
the
yeah.
full committee.
No, so the committee's in July, all of us, for the full list, they're sitting.
it's very tight.
Well, and they wanted just to say, here's everything. So
Yes.
it's not, no one else will have looked at them. It's all like
I'm
raw
hoping-
data.
I'm a little concerned about that part.
Yeah.
But I do, it'd be nice if you know, maybe when we talk to Dan, like June, July,
Yeah.
just to get some clarity on it, because if we're gonna get 100 resolutions, there's no way we cut it through 100.
We're not gonna get 100 resolutions.
I don't know what.
I think.
I didn't think we'd get 20 last time, so. I'm just gonna.
My impression was that they just wanted quick, like, thoughts, like, is
That's
this
kind of what I-
viable, is it not viable? And then their work group would do any type of wordsmithing.
That's what I'm hoping, yeah, I would hope if we got a handful, we're not the ones wordsmithing.
I don't think
That makes sense.
my understanding is they didn't want us wordsmithing, they just wanted to get our reactions.
Yeah, I think one of the issues that happens is there's a long time and then there's not a lot of time at the end.
Yeah.
So like you might see a resolution and go, we really support that.
Mhm.
we could be a signer on to that, you know,
Yeah,
or
that's
something
what we
like.
did.
Or we had a similar thought and let's combine and come up with a better. So I think that was part of it, just to call those things out.
What I'm interested in is, there seem to be some synergies around this work with DNR a little different.
Yeah.
And so my gut feel is some of our neighboring watersheds might all submit something similar. Is kind of what I
Yeah.
was thinking.
Kind of like last year. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it'd be nice that we should get some clarity, but my notes are saying, okay, we got 10 days. They're gonna come in June 1st, they're gonna send them all out, and we're gonna have to respond back quite quickly.
That's similar to what Jan said today. That's right. Yeah.
I decided to do some computer updates.
Uh-huh.
It's starting.
Chocolate it is.
Chocolate.
So, just bouncing off of, Val asked earlier about manufactured home input. If I remember correctly, landfall was one of your award winners last.
Yeah.
March.
Yeah.
It would be really neat if they could sponsor some.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're also looking at later in the presentation that will hopefully arrive soon. We're looking at watershed week activities, and one of the areas that we're tentatively looking at doing activity is at Tanner's Lake, and hopefully working with the city of Landfall and Oakdale to do that. So
That's around August time, right?
yes.
So while you're working on this, other questions. I mean, you had mentioned the importance of really engaging in dialogue, this communication. And so and if I remember correctly, when I first participated in one of these, there was really nice small group discussions, but largely gathering what the audience input or opinion was. And so I was just wondering, is there room in these to actually do watershed education? Well, that wasn't part of the plan, like either at the front end or at the back end. I know these are kind of long, if I remember correctly, the sessions were somewhat long, but I think what I was thinking is people come in with what they know. I mean, that's their reality. And so with part of this open up for anything as much as don't throw your pet goldfish into the wetland,
Right.
or here are 10 things that you personally can do to make water and for water quality. As little as that. Just a thought.
Yeah, so I don't think we're completely set in terms of making each one of those 3 opportunities an open house format. So there is a potential, I think, to do more what you're talking about in terms of small group discussion or a World Cafe format. One of the things I did in preparation for creating this engagement plan was to go back and look at the evaluations from some of the sessions you're talking about. And some of the feedback we got was there was a lot of foundational information provided, and they felt like less opportunity to provide input. Because it sounded like there was a presentation at the beginning. And then there was also some feedback, depending on which table somebody was present at, that there were voices that were more dominant in that particular table, and there were people who did not feel like they had the opportunity to provide feedback. So I think we had a little bit of a discussion about, in terms of format, how could we circumvent those issues? And that's one of the things that I think is a little bit of a challenge with our particular agency, in the fact that we have less visibility, and it takes more time for us to explain what we do specifically and where we do that work. Because they're not familiar boundaries to people, and it's not necessarily a familiar focus. So I think if we were to do that, we'd definitely look at it again and think of how can we do this to provide people with that foundational information so that they have that balance, and how can, you know, we train table level facilitators so that everybody feels like they're able to engage in the process. So I think those are two things in particular that we were kind of focused on. But yeah, I'd love to talk further about your experience and how we could probably integrate that in this process. All right, we've got half of this online. I'll get the Zoom up again and then we'll get going.
Well, if it takes too long, we could not have the negative. We could also just divert, talk administrative report real quick.
That will be
if you
real
need more time.
fast.
Do you want to do that real quick while, or are you close?
I'm fairly close, but I'm fine either way.
Let's go to administrative report.
Sure,
Yeah,
just,
real
I mean,
quick.
there really isn't a lot in there because I was in most of the
medical
month
leave.
of March, so, let me just get to my page here. Have a few meetings towards the end of the month there. Upcoming meetings, Lauren already mentioned Waterfest. You should have received an email. So please fill that out and let us know if you're able to make it. The Minnesota Watershed Summer Tour was mentioned. That's up in Roselle River. I just heard today that they're getting a bus, chartering a bus. So if board members are interested, if they get enough interest in taking the bus up together, you wouldn't have to drive all that way. So that's an option as well.
When do we need to let y'all know if we're coming?
Let me find out. I don't remember if, I think the registration is live. So if you know, you could go to the Minnesota Watershed's website, look at the event information, the dates are there. It's the 24th through the, I think 24th, 25th are the two like active days of the, I'm not sure why I have 26 on there, but the bus will drive up on the Monday, the 23rd and come back in the morning. Well, it'll leave in the morning of the 26th. And then the event is the 24th and 25th. You could let me know at any time if you're able to attend, and we'll have Emily get you registered for that. Yeah, otherwise I had, you know, just a spot here for you guys to talk about the meeting, but you already did that for the February 21st. So that's all I really had for my today.
Short and sweet. Congratulations, Emily and Eric. Eric, 20 years.
Yeah. Plus a couple, he was, I think, in here for 2 years, we decided, so 22 total.
Yeah, congrats to them.
All right.
Business. Thank you for your patience. All right, step 4, reporting and evaluation. So that's something that we've tried to integrate in every program in the communications and engagement department within the last year. So I mentioned the midpoint reporting. We'll also endeavor to have some of that information available at the second board workshop. And then we're going to do some internal assessment of the engagement, the efficacy of those engagement methods. With all of these, our main goal is to get to a point where not only are we using this for the management plan, but this is foundational to continue these engagement efforts. So when I talked about that interactive opportunity for gathering surveys, map-based functions, having that landing page, we hope that that will be available for some of our higher visibility or higher engagement projects. So ones where we have a lot of community questions, people want updates, we'll have this one-stop shop available for them, separate from our individual project pages. We're also looking at continuing to build and expand community partnerships. That's a priority for each one of the staff in my department, to find creative ways to work with community organizations that we already have an existing relationship with, and the new ones that we form relationships with throughout this process. And then we're continuing to grow our visibility and our presence through this process. So not only, of course, there's going to be elements of communication. We're going to be using the tools that we already have in our toolbox in terms of social media and our partnerships with cities to get that word out. But we want to also build in-house that visibility and presence of those particular tools.
What are some of the strongest community partnerships you think we have right now?
I would say East Side Boys and Girls Club is definitely one of them. Are the Ramsey County Master Gardeners. I'm trying to think of other organizations that we've worked with frequently. The district organizations, we're starting to build relationships with local artists and arts organizations. So we're trying to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and a lot of this year has also been working with people that we have existing partnerships with, and I can kind of talk a little bit about that when we talk about the other initiatives. Ways that we're kind of trying to look at finding opportunities where different organizations are also growing and also kind of changing their perspective of the way they do things, and how can we do that together in a mutually beneficial way. So I would definitely put the schools as one of those strong partnerships as well. Something that we have a lot of foundational work with. I don't know.
Lauren, so if you find folks during those engagements that are interested in getting more involved, is there a pathway to refer them to like the CAC?
Oh, the CIC?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think through, as you do these engagements, we might find pockets of people who do want to get more engaged, and I think that's what the CAC is assisting with, and so I was just curious.
Yes, I think in terms of engaging the CAC in this process, that's partly the...
Or more so like identifying future people who might want to participate in the CAC.
Gotcha.
Makes some sense.
One of the challenges there is that right now we have kind of geographic and organization-based representation. And if those spots are filled, we can't necessarily add anybody else.
Sure.
So, I mean, we have members who have been
like
there
water
for 20
stewards and
years.
stuff like that, you know, like there's other pathways.
Water stewards, definitely. And water stewards are...
Making sure that you get people who are interested through, hey, you can actually engage in these pathways is really what I'm trying to...
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not, I don't know what's going on here.
That's actually how I joined.
Really, through an outreach program?
Because I participated and I received a note from the watershed.
It just seems like it's a hotbed for people who might want to help more. That's, I love that idea.
Just call it, leave it.
Okay, I'm just gonna leave it like this. So one of the initiatives that we're looking at is Watershed Week. So this is part of kind of our 50th anniversary campaign and suite of opportunities. And so we're looking at August 3rd through the 10th. The first one is going to be on August 3rd. That's a bike tour. That's going to be the Phelan Lake Chain. We're looking at the scale of how big that could potentially be right now. So we'll definitely be sending out a volunteer ask for that particular event pretty soon. National Night Out, we're trying to build on our existing opportunities and relationships, and National Night Out is a prime opportunity to do that. So we're going to try to build out based on the legacy of what we've done at Eastside Boys and Girls Club, but hopefully other places as well, depending on volunteer interest. We're going to be doing a trivia event at Big Wood Brewing, trying to... All of these are basically targeted at getting completely new people engaged with the watershed district. So people who really don't have a lot of familiarity with what a watershed is, what we do, care about the lakes, but really haven't delved into this very much. And so some of those demographic areas, especially when you get to younger ages, people who rent, some of the ones that I kind of mentioned in that community survey summary that we saw, we're looking at, okay, let's look at opportunities for new people to get involved. And this is inspired by a presentation that we saw at the Minnesota Watersheds Conference that I know some of you were present at as an opportunity for us to engage those new people. And then the last one would be Fishing Day, and we're looking at Tanner's Lake. as the venue for that. So we're trying to spread these events out a little bit throughout the week, kind of do a weekend to weekend. Cooper, our Green Corps AmeriCorps, has really been instrumental in planning this process. So definitely props to him in terms of getting all of this in place. We're hoping to start publicizing this in early May. So as we're doing all of that management plan engagement, we can also offer this opportunity to people as a way for them to get to know the watershed a little bit better in a casual environment.
As you think through the bike tour, what were the trade-offs between bike versus just a walking nature tour? Just in terms of accommodating more folks, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I think we were looking at the particular demographic that we could appeal to.
Okay.
So outdoorsy people who like to do outdoor recreation, cyclists are a particularly passionate group. So
They're gonna show up, yeah.
and it's a little bit easier, especially from a liability perspective, than putting them on the water. We do a little bit of that at Waterfest, so we weren't gonna do, put a lot of people on a canoe and do the Fail and Chain tour that way.
Or just thinking like a walking tour is what I was thinking.
I think we cover a little more ground this way too, to see more of the area.
Super happy with it. Because I like the biking community, I just was curious.
That intended to be like one big tour, or are you gonna send people off in groups with stations? I only ask because there's a lot of, passionate bikers, and there are people dialed in that community with local bike shops, and we've actually had success with them bringing fleets of bikes where you can get families who don't maybe have bikes for their kids involved, and they can put them on a bike and have a fun day. But also, so if you had stations and you could do multiple run-throughs or time starts, I don't know,
That's very
just something
cool
to think about.
Yeah, so we have a passionate cyclist on staff who's kind of been working with us internally and reached out to the Bike Alliance. And we were looking at potentially doing 2 separate shifts of the bike tour. It's just how many people we have to support that. So I think that's going to be the main question that we're going to work through in terms of, okay, do we have enough volunteers and staff to be able to support that and feel confident that people are going to have a good experience, especially because this is kind of our first run through with this sort of thing. But I think with all of these, if they're successful, this can be a regular thing that we do. So it's a little bit of an experiment. A lot of the stuff is, but we're really hoping that similar to Raleigh Purgatory Bluff Creek District, we can, kind of build on the success and get more people involved. But yeah, I think that's a great connection, and I'll probably hit you up later for who to talk to about those bikes.
Do you know how long?
I don't off the top of my head. I know we're planning on starting at the office and ending at the office as kind of a solid place, and we have bathrooms available here. People can go into the building, and we don't have to really deal with permitting. And I think that was kind of the main decision there. But a lot of this is definitely in the early planning phase. So,
well, I like starting at the building, we can tour. There's a lot of really cool things about that.
Very true. So the second part is the celebration event. You can kind of see our preliminary logo drafts on the right there, and things that we're going to be offering in that particular event. That's also in early planning. So, what we're going to have lined up in terms of food and activities. We're trying to make this a family-friendly community event that's both available to people who have worked with us a long time, have partnered with us, can kind of celebrate this progress as their success as well. And, our surrounding communities, so people in Little Canada and other communities. Other new initiatives. So I mentioned Cooper is conducting a training for the Outreach Engagement Volunteer Pilot. We're doing the MREP High School Career Exploration Program with some high schools that are in Washington County. And that application is open until early May. It's basically an opportunity for high schoolers, juniors, and seniors to try out multiple water management careers and explore different aspects. So they'll be doing wetland delineation and tree ID. They'll be flying a drone. They'll be talking about communications and natural resources and permitting. So all of the aspects. And we're basically looking at this as another way that we can potentially diversify the water management workforce and also have a hands-on and creative education opportunity. So we're supporting MREP as they're going through this pilot and being key partners in terms of creating that process. District 2 stewardship grant outreach, we're working with District 2 in St. Paul to go door to door and do stewardship grant outreach in some areas where we're seeing less stewardship grants and seeing if that's a successful outreach method in having materials at local libraries. So we're working closely with the Romero. Cooper has been working with them in addition to some of our other staff on doing that. You've seen our spring webinars, hopefully the one that Paula conducted recently. We haven't. Ashley is doing next week on stewardship grant maintenance. And that flows into our Ramsey County Master Gardener Mentor Program, where we're going to have trained volunteers visit stewardship grant recipients who have questions about maintaining their rain garden, plant ID, those sorts of things. And we're hoping that's going to give them some tools to feel like they can be successful in long-term maintenance. I'm just going to speed through some of this information here. We have a new employee starting on Monday, Jewel Miley. So she's going to be our communications associate. She has an MS in conservation biology and environmental sustainability from the University of Central Florida. She cut her teeth in terms of marketing, event planning, and video design at Johnston Library in Tennessee, and she has GIS training as part of her education, so we're very excited for her to join us. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the education program. They had some transitions this year in terms of staffing. Course Sage, in her long-term history of 25 years in the education program, retired. Carrie and Tracy have worked seamlessly together to have a continuity throughout that process. And they've also started to develop new initiatives and new lessons. And this is one that I thought was particularly cool. So there was an elementary schooler with visual disability. And so they decided to reconfigure a lesson that they had to be more sensory. So they do these kind of little sculptures of native plants, and it also really engaged the rest of the students in terms of talking about different parts of the plants and how they all work together and their significance. So that's been incredibly successful. And I just think I just want to give them all the credit for being able to do that. So yeah, I think that's essentially what I have for you today. I can go into other things or answer questions.
I'm very excited to see this go.
I think this is great. This is a real opportunity for us to pursue, bring in more people. This looks great. Thank you.
Do you have tentative dates for those community engagement open houses?
No. So we're working through finding a venue and those dates right now. And we'll definitely keep you all updated as soon as those are finalized.
I'm assuming in the Watershed Week, you're also seeking volunteers if you need.
Yes.
I know
So-
that there's at least two, maybe more avid bikers on this board. So.
So Lauren, what is success going to look like for you?
I think success will be learning something new about our community. If that is, we find some of these opportunities are not as successful as we thought they were going to be, that's a learning opportunity. because we have so many facets to this particular engagement plan, what I'm expecting to happen is that we will learn something new about the areas where we're spending more time and effort, where we have had less of a presence. And we're also going to be able to expand the number of perspectives. So from a management plan perspective, in terms of what that means for the management plan update, that's to be seen. But long-term, when I was talking about building those relationships, I think from my program's perspective, that's the most significant thing, is that we're starting to look at foundationally how to build these relationships in areas where, you know, our communications, our existing communications isn't really reaching very consistently. Where, you know, the existing events are not, we're not seeing a lot of people attending. So we have, as part of that evaluation process, we know who attends Waterfest and who doesn't. And other events that are at Lake Phelan, or, you know, who attends our recognition dinner, who tends to look at our social media, who tends to look at our newsletters and start to kind of expand our perspective. This is kind of what we're looking at. This is one of my favorite quotes in terms of communications, and I think it really applies to engagement as well, is that it's very easy to have an internalized bias in terms of I am reaching people. And that's very well studied in terms of maybe you hear from people that, you know, go to the same places as you or live in the same area. And it happens to organizations as well. So with this evaluation, with this experimentation, what we're trying to do is get outside of that bubble as much as humanly possible and get that feedback in so we can make sure that we're not harboring that illusion that we're communicating successfully with the district, that we're engaging with everybody. And I think I see that as not something that's going to have an end date. It's going to be an ongoing process. So yeah.
Just as a note, so we hopefully would expect to see more traffic, do you think, too, in addition to those things, in terms of like the internet links and whatnot?
Yeah, that's my hope. So this is another illustration of what we're looking at here in terms of the illusion that is taking place. So I mentioned that community survey. This is one of the most fascinating pieces of information. So I'm still digging through that survey in terms of cross tabulations that we had. This one is broken down in terms of that first question about people's level of familiarity with our organization. And you'll notice that this is one of the biggest differences that we noticed in this survey, is how people say they prefer to receive their information. You'll notice email and local government websites, that yellow are people who know who we are and what we do. So why is that so different? Is that because they have the tools and the knowledge to know if I'm working with a local government agency, I go to these places? Or is that because it's just naturally more accessible to that particular group? And then the most fascinating thing, I think, is the difference in text messaging, because it's the reverse. So we have those three categories of people who have no idea who we are, they know who we are and they don't know what we do, or they're just completely unsure. And they are telling us much more than that, yes, I'm familiar with you group, I prefer text messaging. So this is, you know, in terms of, we can look at, okay, we have so many likes on Facebook, great. Or, you know, we have a 50% open rate on our email, we're doing a really good job. But being able to constantly get this information in and continue to evaluate and continue to question ourselves, I think is making us better and better at reaching our community and different communities. So
Are you
kind of the question.
Are you staying synced with the other urban watershed districts?
Yes.
It seems like if we all kind of attack it together, it would help, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think that's something that we do a lot in terms of looking to other watershed districts, what are they doing successfully? What has built relationships, in Capital Region or Rice Creek or South Washington or Blama. And I try to keep in contact with some of those communication staff so that we can kind of share ideas and initiatives and what's working and what's not. And there's other networks as well.
That's really great. Any other questions for Lauren? I'm super excited.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, jump into over 11 because we covered it to number 12. I only had one comment this month, and it was at A, and I just from a personal bias standpoint, I have a set of friends that I've developed in that space, and I think it's great that we're looking at that unique population in manufactured homes. So thank you.
So we're doing all of 12.
Yeah.
Question on X. The goldfishes just boggles my mind. So why do you think the report shows that there were 3 locations that were monitored? Why do you think they're there? Or is it because we've seen them in the past? And are there in other places?
Maybe Paul, are you still on?
Yes, I am. Those 3 locations have been, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
They had been reported to us as having goldfish. I dug through the files, I just came on, it'll be 2 years in July, so I was getting up to speed on the carp, and then it was brought to me that there's goldfish at the Wicklander, Wakefield, and the other sites. Carp Solutions, Shemek from Carp Solutions went out and did a cursory look at those last summer and did notice goldfish. And just in discussions we've had with other staff and Carp Solutions, we thought maybe we could take a bigger look and see how many goldfish are actually in there, and are they causing water quality or habitat issues. As far as how they're getting in there, they are getting dumped from people's aquariums more than likely.
Yeah, I was just looking at, I guess, Wicklander is right by the Maplewood YMCA. I don't remember seeing, maybe there's more stuff around their housing, I don't know, but.
It's a city campus, yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Seems
know.
weird or there's a connection from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the challenge with goldfish, and I've talked to Lauren about outreach that we could do, and you tell a whole bunch of people not to dump their aquariums into local water bodies, and maybe you catch a percentage. The goldfish is different than the carp issue. We remove carp, and we're pretty sure that there's nobody putting carp back in the waterways, but there's no guarantee with that with goldfish.
I don't know if Tracy and Carrie could add that.
Yeah.
For the audience
kids,
are the
yeah.
younger kids, right?
Right.
So please don't.
Yeah.
This is what happens, and you can show them a ginormous goldfish.
Yeah.
This is what happens.
I think it's the parents trying to disappear goldfish.
If your parents need to disappear them, just disappear them in the
There's a different way
in
to
the
do
yard.
it. Yeah.
Bury them.
I had a conversation with some other parents. That's something that was told.
Oh.
It's not humane.
Mhm.
Thank you. It was a great report. Looking forward to what the report on April 3rd comes back with, if it's different than, or if the discussion is focuses you on something else that's maybe surprising or different than what was included in the report. But
Yeah, that meeting tomorrow is at Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, so we're interested to see what they have to report, and maybe suggestions for what we could be doing differently.
Any other questions?
I have a question on E.
Mhm.
About the line, which item E is, it has to do with the, additional planning for kind of watershed, stormwater.
The modeling, yeah, the
Modeling.
modeling updates.
And I guess my question is two-part. Does this represent a kind of update to past subwatershed resiliency work we've been doing? Or is this kind of independent?
Yeah, this is independent. This is kind of catching a couple of different areas in the model that over time we've identified as a need to make some improvements. One of them is, or one of those areas is incorporating the survey data in the Beltline tunnel that was collected as part of the inspection work. Another one of those areas is we have a small portion of St. Paul that we currently don't have in our model, but the city of St. Paul does have a model for. So this past month, we reached out to St. Paul to request that model. They've shared it with us. So we're going through reviewing their model. The intent is that we'll bring over the pipe network, the overland flow, the hydraulics part of it directly into our model. We'll have to update some of the hydrology just to make sure the methodologies are consistent with what we use. So not an overhaul, but there's some very specific areas that we've identified an opportunity to collaborate with the city of St. Paul or incorporate data that we're collecting as part of other projects.
And I guess another question on that same item. Is this going to incorporate the, I forget the version, but the updated atlas? There's is it 16 or
15?
15?
Yeah, no, that's not this one. That's coming out. Atlas 14 right now is the document that includes rainfall depths that we design to, that we use in the model. Currently, NOAA is going through and updating all of those design rainfall depths. In 2025, they're scheduled to release draft numbers, so we'll get a sense of what's changing. Those draft numbers, there's a review period. They take comments back, and then they'll release final numbers are scheduled for 2026, scheduled. And so but we wouldn't update our model until there are final numbers available in 26.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Item J. This is the water level for lakes, and I noted that it does not include either Jarvis or Keller, but it does include Spoon. And I'm just curious if Spoon, because it's directly connected and close by, adjacent to, will monitoring Spoon have some implicative data information that would help us understand water level fluctuation in Jarvis as well as Keller?
Yeah, they're all the same. They're all at the same water.
Same level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that we have just the one at Spoon for that whole area.
Yeah, so it does represent that whole area.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All I have.
Good questions. Good update. About to hit heavy into construction season, so I'm sure we're gonna get a lot more flavor as it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do have just a small kind of information item on the action log, which we didn't really touch on with the administrator's report. One of the things that we have on the action log is the shoreline work. And I saw a couple of seminars recently of shoreline work that's been done at Big Marine Carnelian watershed. Very impressive. It's something that their constituency, I will call it, really is pushing them for. And I think there's a lot that we could maybe think about or incorporate as we go forward in our work on shoreline. So if we haven't already, I think it'd be worth it contacting them and get a little rundown.
Do you know if it was recorded, Mark? Because
It is recorded, but I think it's
under a
probably
pavement.
saved on the PCA's
Got you.
network, so I'm not sure that people have.
Yeah,
um,
yeah, we can
access
see
there.
about getting, I know, he's done other presentations too,
Yeah.
so we can check him.
That'd be great.
Yep.
So that's perfect bridge into item number 13. Any other comments besides what Mark made?
Just with construction season, if there's any opportunity for us to get out and see some of the work that
Yeah.
the staff is
Yes.
undertaking,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
always
That
awesome.
is a good
Oh,
reminder.
yeah, we can start that up.
Pre-tour, pre-meeting.
Yeah.
Great, good call out. Good
Yep.
questions, good discussion. Thank you all very much. Anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Perfect. Thank you all very much.